let's go get it. Acts 27, 21 through 25. Acts 27, 21 through 25. You can keep your seats. We're going to read through it. We're going to study. We're going to break this word down. We're going to get as far as we can get. And I just believe God is doing something. Anybody still thriving? You thriving this year? It ain't as many as it was at the beginning of the year. I like, whoo. At the beginning, it was like, yeah. Now it's like, whew, it's been a lot going on. But we're gonna get it because we're going to talk about it today. So Acts 27, 21 through 25. And it reads, and I'll be reading New King James, so if it's a little different, it's okay. I know we've been having some difficulties, so we may not be able to get it up on the screen, but that's okay. It says, but after long abstinence from food, then Paul stood in the midst of them and said, men, you should have listened to me and not have sailed from Crete and incurred this disaster and loss. And now I urge you to take heart, for there, I need you to highlight this, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, do not, highlight this one too, do not be afraid. Paul, you must be brought before Caesar, and indeed God has granted you all those who sail with you. Look at somebody and say, the people around me are blessed because of me. Therefore, take heart, men, for, I need you to highlight this, I believe God that it will be just as it was told to me. For a title, this is old school. My mom used to say this all the time. I need you to write this down. Be of good cheer. And if I had to give you, because that's what we do when we get up here, we give you a subtitle too. I believe God. Be of good cheer. I believe God. Is that anybody's testimony that you believe God this morning? If you believe God, let me just see your hands real quick. Hassan, it's good to see you this morning, sir. If you believe God, just let me see your hand. And so here's the thing. It's so easy for us to talk about what it looks like to go through a storm or what we should do and how we should act, in the event that we were in a storm if you're not in a storm. People that ain't never parented always love to tell people that got kids how they would be a parent if it was them, right? And people love to tell you when you're dealing with heartache and pain and struggle and you're going through situations, how you ought to go through that situations. And they tell you stuff like, the joy of the Lord is your strength, and you should just know. And it's easy to talk about how you ought to go through a storm if you ain't in that storm. And sometimes when you in that storm and people trying to say that stuff to you, you just want to be like, shut your mouth. Because you don't know what I'm dealing with, right? You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what it cost me. You don't know all the pain that I feel as I'm dealing with it. Sometimes you just want to be like, don't say nothing to me. And so sometimes when we're in the storm, we retreat because the people that are not in the storm always got the advice for somebody that's going through something. But when you're going through the storm, here's the thing. All of the training, all your questions, all your internal struggles, all your fears, all of your inadequacies, all of the things that you have learned over the course of your entire life, they become tested when that rubber meets the road. You know the word, and you got all these scriptures, and you all got all these highlights. Your whole Bible is highlighted in the New King James Version of the Bible app in your phone. But the thing is, when you go through the storm, you got to figure out how to apply all of those scriptures that you know. And so all this preaching, me hollering up here, all that shouting, all that raising the hands, all that anointing you got is on display when you go through a situation. And sometimes you can't even use it because you are so bound in that storm that you don't know how to apply all of that word that you've been taught your whole life. So how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it? Because when you're going through a storm, the saints are watching, right? And when you're going through a storm, the ain'ts are watching. The non-believers, they watching, and they're watching to see how you respond. They're watching to see how you act. They're watching to see how much you drink. They're watching to see how much you smoke. They're watching to see how much you cuss. They're watching to see how you curse. They're watching how to see how you cope with what you are dealing with. Because with your rooted and grounded self in the word, if you can't make it through the storm, then it ain't no hope for some of these other people that are barely holding on. So how you go through your storm is sometimes just as important as you making it through the storm. Because you are supposed to be the church. You're the city that's set on a hill. You're supposed to mirror God. You got all these biblical principles, and you can say all of this stuff. But what happens when you lose your job and you didn't do nothing wrong? What happens when people lie on you and they talk about you and they scandalize you? You know, I say that. They scandalize your name. But you ain't done nothing wrong. How do you act when that stuff is happening? And it's important how you deal with it because you got people watching you. Because how you go through is just as important as you coming out. Because I'm here to tell you that your storm ain't even for just you. Your storm, what you are dealing with sometimes, it ain't even just for you. It might be, look at the person beside you. Your storm might be for the person that's sitting right beside you. The issues you're dealing with in your marriage, yeah, some of y'all caused them, but sometimes it's for the person beside you to see, how do I make it when I go through that situation? Can I get somebody to shout amen? Woo, I feel all right, man. I feel all right. And when you go through the storm, you got to be strong, because what will happen, the storm will expose your weaknesses. We built a house a couple of years ago. Lex still a little sour about this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. We built a house a couple of years ago, and what happened is we've had a couple of storms. And the storm hit about 2 years ago. So we're in this new house, and you think you good, right? But we had a whole bunch of rain. Now, we did not lose any power. There was no major issues or anything like that. But a few days after the storm, we began to see paint peeling off the wall in our laundry room. And it was an area up at the top, and it was near the ceiling. And so what happened, the paint started peeling, and we saw it start to mold just a little bit. All right, and so we finally got in touch with the builder. And if you ever built a house, you ever moved into a house, you know once you get into that house, they don't care about you no more. Unless you got a good realtor, like some of the people that's in this room right here, because they'll go to bat for you. They'll be the advocate. They'll be the paraclete when it's time. I got deep for just a moment. But they will go to bat for you when you got some issues. But the builder, once you get in the house, their goal is to get your house built as fast, under budget as they can, so that they can get you in that house. And then after a certain warranty period, whatever happens to your house is on you. Not even to mention that if you go past a certain distance from the front of your house, they will tell you they don't cover that stuff out there all the way in your backyard, because they don't cover no more than 60 to 100 feet off of where the road line is. So their goal is to get you in the house. Ain't that right, Jill? You know, get some stuff wrong in your backyard and see if you can get somebody out there. They ain't coming, because their goal was to get you in the house. So we had this storm, and so we were dealing with the builder, and I reached out to the builder, and the builder was like, well, we're not going to cover it because it was a named storm. And you should have told us before the storm. Now, I had all the email proof that showed that I had been trying to reach out to them. So then they said, well, you can file it with the insurance company. So then when you call the insurance company said, you can't file a claim if you didn't have this on here, because this was a storm that you can't file a claim on. And so you couldn't file it under the insurance company either. Oh, we went through it. Let me tell you, I got all kinds of emails. And so they were trying to figure out ways that they could deny trying to fix the house. The problem was that it wasn't the roof, it wasn't the wall, but there was a weak spot between where the roof and the wall met. A piece of flashing wasn't put in place properly, and so water began to seep down my wall to the point where it shut off our power. And we had water coming out of the outlet. And so now that's a whole nother story, how we had to deal with all of that stuff. But finally, I was able to get in touch with the builder, who got in touch with the people who did the roof. Now, what they said to me, they said, we'll send somebody out, and if we can identify that it's our fault, we will cover it for you. But if it's not on us, then you're going to have to pay for it yourself. So they finally sent somebody out. They finally were able to identify that it wasn't on us, and that it was a piece of flashing that wasn't covered well. So when it transitioned from a horizontal plane to a vertical plane, the water would seep down into a crack. So they fixed it, didn't even say nothing about it. They just kept it moving. And so the roofer came out to fix the weak area. The thing that I'm trying to get you to understand is when you are going through a storm, you begin to find leaks in the weak areas that you haven't gotten stronger in your life. If you got an issue with faith when you go through a storm, guess what's tested the most? That faith. If you got an issue with cussing, guess what's tested when you go through that trial? Cussing. If you got an issue with your anger when you go through a storm, guess what's tested? Your anger. If you're having issues in your marriage and a storm comes your way, guess what gets affected because it's the weakest part of what you got going on? Your marriage. So the storm will expose your weaknesses. And see, I'm not sure if you got or understand this, but if you're struggling with those areas, you got to make them stronger before the storm hits. We about to get into hurricane season, y'all. Y'all ought to be doing some stuff in your house to make sure you're prepared for when the storm comes. Because we know, and we're going to get a couple of storms this season. So you got to be preparing your life, your heart, your mind, your marriage for the storm, because a storm will begin to expose all of your weaknesses. If you're bad at managing money, guess what's going to happen when that storm comes? Your money going to get tested. When that tire go flat and you ain't got no savings in the bank, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get tested. So you got to begin to work on your areas of weakness because a storm is coming. Look at somebody say, a storm is coming. And how you deal with the storm is just as important as making it through the storm, y'all. So prior to this storm, you got to strengthen yourself in God, because during that storm, you got to focus on what God is doing and not just what you're going through. Look at somebody and say, be of good cheer. Believe in God. See, the thing is, they finally came out to my house, but they didn't care about me. They didn't care if they fixed my house or not. I have been telling them that in the event that they don't come out, I'm going to figure out the best way I can, the most saved Christian way, to give them a bad review for what they had done. So when they came out to my house, they didn't care about me. They cared about the testimonial that I was going to give on their behalf because of either the way they took care of me or their negligence in what they did. See, the thing that God is doing as you deal with the storm, God is not concerned with what you're doing in the midst of the storm. He's concerned about the testimony that you get when you come out of it. You so focused on getting out of the storm, but God is developing a testimony. Oh. See, you making it through that storm, that's just about you. But how you made it through the storm is about God. And when you go through the storm, you got to remember this simple message. My mama used to say it all the time: be of good courage and be of good cheer. But it's hard to be of good cheer when everything around you look like it's coming crashing down. You just paid some $1,000 for your house, and then you see the paint coming down. It's hard to be of good cheer when you just bought a car and you drove and it's a nail in the tire. It's hard to be of good cheer when you're in a marriage that you thought wasn't going to have no problems, but y'all get to arguing on who's supposed to cook and gender roles. It's hard to be of good cheer when the storm comes. It's hard to be of good cheer when you get to college and you're used to not studying, but now you got to work harder because the work is different and the teachers don't care about you the same as they did in high school. See, the thing is, the storm is not always determined by your disobedience. It's what God can get out of what you went through is what God is looking for. It's not, we were cultured, we were raised to bring up, well, they're going through something because they must have sinned. And that was under the law. We're no longer under the law, so we don't go through stuff just because we messed up. It says where sin has abound, grace has much more. So you're not just going through because you did something wrong. Sometimes you're going through because you did something right. Sometimes you're going through Because, Dontario, you did something right. The enemy wants to test you. He wants you to fall. But God has another plan for you, sir. So we got to get out of the mindset that, oh, I'm going through. Jesus must not love me. He's not with me in the storm. We're about to walk through this thing. We're about to walk through this thing. But the storm is not determined by your disobedience. The word be of good courage means to be bold. It means to have confidence. It means to take heart. So when I tell you be of good courage, it don't mean that it's going to be easy. It just means you got to be confident in what you're going through, that God is going through that situation with you. So when my mom used to say be of good courage and be of good cheer, it didn't mean I wasn't going to have any hard times. It just meant that even in the middle of me going through some situations, God was still going to be with me. So be confident in what he's already provided for you. So here we're talking about Paul. Now, Paul was arrested in Jerusalem after being falsely accused. You hear what I said? Falsely accused. Some of you are going through situations not because you messed up. You're being falsely accused. That thing that you're going through on your job is not because you did it. It's because the enemy wants to do something to sift you. He wants you to give up on what you've been called to do. So Paul was falsely accused of stirring up riots. Now, here's the thing. He kind of was stirring up riots because what he was doing was what some of us do now. He was disrupting what was going on in the environment. He was speaking the truth. You had Pharisees, Sadducees, and you had the Sanhedrin, who was these council of people who were living by the law and under the law, and they were trying to hold you, and they believed, some believed resurrection, some didn't believe. And so Paul was teaching the gospel of Christ, and what it was doing, it was getting people riled up. So it's not that you messing up and doing stuff intentionally. It's because you're doing something that disrupts what the enemy knows he don't want you to do. So you end up going through persecution because you're doing what God called you to do. You're taking away some of the things that people believe, but there's no spiritual evidence to understand it. There's no Holy Ghost behind it that's revealing that stuff. And so you're breaking down barriers and walls, even in the church. And so the enemy don't like it. So what does he do? He persecutes you because he's trying to take you down. But God has a plan. I'm talking too loud. I'm sorry. I'll calm down a little bit. But y'all, I'm excited. Once I began to understand and realize that not just me, but some of you not going through because you messed up. You're going through stuff because you got it right. And you just got to begin to be of good courage. I need you to look at somebody and say, be of good courage. Oh, they trying to fire you. They trying to fire you at work because you're doing what they didn't think should be done. But you got to be of good courage. They tried to make you look bad. They sent an email. They said that you said something that you didn't say. You need to be of good courage. And so when Paul was tried, they sent him back. He tried to be sent back to Jerusalem, but if he had gone back, they probably would have sentenced him to death. And so Paul exercised his legal right for an appeal to Caesar. This is in Acts 25 and 11. So then he was taken into custody by the Romans and moved to Caesarea for his protection, where he then spent 2 years in prison. Ain't that crazy how God will put you in prison for your protection because they out here trying to kill you? You complaining about the situation that you're going through, but God is using the situation to protect you from everything else that's going on around it. So at the start of this trip, Paul is a prisoner. But Paul had favor. So even in the midst of being a prisoner, Paul had favor with this centurion guard. Even in the midst of your storm, God is still blessing you. If you can look close enough to understand that he's still been with you, even though you've been going through all kinds of stuff, you can recognize that even in the midst of the storm, God has me covered. And so Paul was already apprehensive about this trip. So let's look at it. Verse number 10. It says, Paul was saying, men, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and ship, but also of our lives. So Paul already felt some type of way. Verse 11 says, nevertheless, the centurion was more persuaded by the helmsman and the owner of the ship than by the things that were spoken by Paul. So Paul tried to tell them in the beginning, hey, listen, I don't think that this is a good idea. Because if we get on this ship, we're going to have a Gilligan's Island here. Anybody who watched the Gilligan's Island? They were on a what kind of tour? 3-hour tour. I started to call our jet ski rentals Gilligan Island one time. I didn't think that the name would have gone well. But Paul said, I don't think that this is going to be a good trip. So instead of listening to him, they set sail for Rome for Paul to be tried for something that he didn't even do. Anybody ever been accused of something that you didn't do? Anybody ever been accused? Like they said you did it. They say you talked slick. They say you had a bad, now some of y'all do have bad attitudes sometimes, so I'll pull that one back. But you ever been accused of something that you didn't do? And so Paul was on his way to be tried for something he didn't do. And at this point, Paul has been through many storms. See, the thing is, we love to talk about having faith. We love to talk about having patience. But when we go through, we look like, God, why we got to deal with this? But it says in this life, you will have trials. Woo! So at this point, Paul has been beaten. Paul has been arrested. Paul has been lied on, which these are all spiritual storms. Although these are physical instances, these are spiritual storms that many of us go through. But this time he's headed to a real physical storm. But here's what we overlook. When we're going through a storm, it's not always just for us. What you are dealing with is not for you. Paul's struggles was for him to be a witness for Christ. Your struggles are for you to be a witness for Christ. That's why it's important how you go through and not just you making it out. Look at somebody and say, you gonna make it. I believe God. And see, while Paul is going through, Paul had to remember why he was going through this stuff. Look at Acts 26 and 17. Y'all don't believe me? Y'all, I'm going to show you because I got to be like, God, why did he got to go through all this stuff? And why do we have to deal with this stuff? Sometimes we like to be like, well, I messed up, so now I'm being punished, and I got to deal. I'm not dealing with that kind of stuff. There is a reason for why God does what he does in your life. Look at it. Let's look at it. Acts 26 and 17. It says, I will deliver you from the Jewish people as well as from the Gentiles, to whom I now send you. The only way for Paul to get to the people that he was trying to get to is they had to keep him on trial so he could minister to the people. And the only way for him to get there was for him to go through this storm. Verse number 18 says, why? To open their eyes in order to turn them from darkness to light. It ain't about you. This wasn't so Paul could be a better person. Paul had to go through so that other people could turn to God. Woo. Once I started seeing it, I was like, wow. So God, you took Paul through what he had to go through so that he could reach more people. Oh, and we started asking, well, God, why you had to do that? Don't worry about it, because I asked all these questions too. I was like, God, why did we have to go through so much? Can't you just go fix the people? Can't you do this without me? And you know what God said? No, I'm going to use you to reach the people that I need to reach. Because there's certain people that I can't reach. Dig and share, there's certain people you can't reach. There's certain people you can't reach, Minister Stanley. There's certain people you can't reach, Perry. So God has to use you to get to his people. The reason you go to that bowling alley and you get to testify how God about to bring you out of this situation is so God can reach some more people. Man, some of y'all are struggling. Don't look. Some of us are struggling. We don't want people to know how bad we're struggling. You're going through a situation, and your friends been trying to get you to turn your back on God because they saying, why would God let you go through this stuff? It's so that he can reach somebody else. You're the only one that can get to him, so I need you to go through it so I can use your testimony to get to him. Man. Oh, man. This message was tiring for me because I was like, I kept asking God, why? Verse number 18 says to open their eyes in order to turn them from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and an inheritance among those who are sanctified by faith in me. I'm sending you, and you got to go through some of this stuff so I can reach somebody else. Now, you got to be careful when you tell God stuff like, God, use me. You know how we like to say, God, if you can do anything, Lord, you can use me. Y'all know that? Anybody know that song? When you start saying, God, use me, you about to be used. I ain't even got no other word. Use. When God uses you, he's using you for his glory, not for yours. So sometimes the success that you think you should get, you don't get it because it's for you to help other people get to where they need to get. I started getting a little wary the other week. I help people run their businesses. I help other people's businesses be successful. And you know what God told me? Stop worrying about your business and focus on this house. And I'm like, well, God, hey, God, wait a minute. He told me if I take care of his house, he will take care of mine. And so, don't clap yet. Hold on. Because I've been in a place where sometimes, and let's just be real, when you pour yourself into other people, even though you're not doing it for the return, sometimes you start looking at God like, God, why I got to go through what I'm going through? I'm doing this to help somebody else. What's happening to my blessing? Am I talking to anybody? And I had to humble myself because I was like, God, I should have more for all of the help that I'm doing. And I started doing something, and I was like, I'm going to charge for it. And you know what God told me to do? Do it for free. And I said, well, wait a minute, God. I said, God, well, I got bills to pay too. So I got to a place where I was going back and forth, and the message was so relevant to me because I'm trying to figure out, God, I'm going through stuff, but you're still calling me to help other people because it ain't for me. It's for me to help you get to where God called you. I ain't worried about me no more. I'm trying to do everything that God told me to do for his people. And he said, I will take care of you, but your responsibility is to take care of others. So the stuff that I've been dealing with, it ain't even for me. It's so I can help you get through what you're dealing with. And so I say, use me. And it's like, well, don't use me no more. Anybody ever felt like that? So I kept asking. I'm serious. I kept asking, why does Paul have to go through the storm to get to Rome? Why does he have to go? Why you got to go to Rome at all? God, why can't you just blow up Rome? And so Acts 23:11, let's look at it. I was like, God, please show me. Why does Paul got to deal with this? Because as I'm looking at Paul, you know what you do. You find somebody in the Bible that relates to you. And I'm looking like, Paul, why does Paul have to go through? Then I start asking, well, God, why do I go through? Acts 23:11, it says, and so here Paul is going through a series of trials. And throughout his trials, Paul is testifying. He's spreading the word about Jesus. So Paul's trials, he's getting the opportunity to be in front of people that he wouldn't have had the opportunity to be in front of just so he could testify of what Jesus was doing. And so 23:11 says, but the following night, the Lord stood by him and said, be of good cheer, Paul, for as you testified for me in Jerusalem, so you must also bear witness in Rome. What that let me know was that what I'm going through right now is not for this place. What I'm going through right now is for where God is taking me. It's so that I can reach another group of people. It's so I can help another area. The thing that I'm dealing with, it ain't even for me. It's for me to be able to tell somebody about how good God is. But what happens is when we're going through the storm, we get caught up in our own treatment in that storm. and we forget about everybody else. But what you're going through ain't just for you. Now, some of us need to make sure we check what we're dealing with and what we have done, because some of us have created our own storms. So now let's not downplay it. Some of you that made some money and made some bad financial decisions, and then we say stuff like, I don't know why I'm going through this. I know why you're going through that. But this is for the person who's going through situations, who's going through storms, but you ain't done nothing wrong. You've done it right. You've served the Lord. You've prayed. You've cried. You've tarried. You've interceded, but you're still dealing with stuff. And it's because God is about to use you to bless somebody else. So what you're going through is not just for you. You've been doing right. You've been serving God. You've been praying. You've been fasting. You feel like you done got everything together, but what you're dealing with is not for you. Lord, I'm supposed to be at all my points by now. We got to get up out of here. So what happened, Paul was on a mission, and he was preaching the gospel because some of the people in Rome were still under the law, and they were still dealing with Moses' law, and then some of the people over there were just new to Christ, and so he was on a bigger mission because some of them were still worshiping idols. So Paul had to get from where he was so that he could spread the gospel into Rome so that the others could have the opportunity for forgiveness. Oh, God is so good, y'all. And the question becomes, how do we do this? How do we stay? How do we be of good cheer? How do we believe in God when you're going through a storm that you didn't cause? We're going to answer those questions. Verse number 21, it says, but after a long abstinence from food, then Paul stood in the midst of them and said, men, you should have listened to me and have not sailed from Crete. You know, every once in a while, we still got to throw in there what you should have did. Well, I tried to tell y'all. Anybody in a relationship and you were like, you can't just do it. You just be like, well, I told you not to put that over there anyway. And so Paul is saying, man, you should have listened to me and not have sailed. Verse number 22 says, and now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of God, whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, don't be afraid. It says, you must be brought to Caesar, and indeed God has granted you all those who sail with you. Point number one, I need you to understand that God can still speak to you during your storm. Even though you're going through tumultuous and tough situations, God can still speak to you. See, the trouble is when we go through a storm, we begin to take our eyes off God. So we no longer believe that we can hear from God because we're going through stuff. But God is still and still can speak to you even when you're going through something, Jackie. So in other words, God's saying, I got you. My plan is not for you to die on this ship, Paul, because I need you to get somewhere else. I need you to get to where I have for you to get so you can speak to the people that I need you to speak to. And you're the person I need to reach. Jeremiah 29:11, we like to quote it, but when we go through a storm, it goes away. Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and hope. But sometimes we don't read any further than that. It says, then you will call on me and go and pray to me, and I will listen to you. Even in the midst of your storm, God is still listening to you. But you got to be willing to pray to him. We stop. You know what happens in a marriage? When you're going through something, you stop talking. The same thing happens when we go through a storm. We stop talking to God. But the word says, we like to read, for I know the thoughts that I think. But it says, then you will call on me and pray to me, and I will listen to you. Verse number 13 says, and you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all what? Even in the midst of your storm, you still need to be searching for God with all your heart. Anybody ever been in a storm and you just like, God, I need you right now. I need you to move. I need you to do it. The word says if you seek him, you'll find him. Woo! But you got to pray. Some of us get in the midst of that storm and we stop praying, y'all, because we feel like we're being punished or we feel like God can't help me. we got to make sure that we are still searching for him, that we start searching for, and we stop searching for other ways out. Because God is saying, be of good cheer. This is the time that you've got to be confident in what he said to you. This is the time where the rubber meets the road. And so here's the thing you got to understand. Not only did he spare Paul, but he spared the lives of all of the people around him. Verse number 37 says, and in all, we were 276 persons on the ship. Verse 44 says, and so it was that they all escaped to land safely. Your anointing carries weight. Your purpose has power. What you've been called to do has the ability to save the people around you. What you are going through and what you're dealing with, Hakeem, it's not for you. It's for other people to get closer to God, sir. Acts 27 and 31. It says, for there stood by me this night an angel of the God whom I belong and I serve, saying, do not be afraid, Paul. You must be brought before Caesar. And indeed, God has granted you all those who sail with you. Point number 2, you have got to speak the word in your storm. You have got to speak the word in your storm. See, some of us have heard the word of God. Some of us know all of these scriptures. Some of us come to church Sunday in and Sunday out, and we get what we get on Sunday. But when we go through situations, we don't speak what God said. We start speaking what we see. You can't speak what you see, Hakeem. We say all of these, that's why I love it. We say all these. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen, which means I can't just speak on what is right in front of me. I got to speak by faith what God said. So when the angel showed up to Paul, Paul could have just held on. We are not going to die. Look at somebody and say, I'm not going to die in this place. When you go through a storm is when you got to remember the word. I lost my house, but I'm not going to die in this place. I lost my wife, but I'm not going to die in this place. I lost my car, but I'm not going to die in this place. I can't even get to work tomorrow right now, but I'm not going to die in this place because God said I'm going to get over there because I got a word to reach somebody else. You are not going to die in this place. That unemployment, it didn't kill you. You're not going to die right there. God got some more people for you to reach. And so what happens is we start speaking stuff like, I just can't catch a break. Why is it always got to be me? It's always something. I'm just robbing Peter to pay Paul. We start using all of these different statements, but we speak life to what we see, and we're not speaking what God says. You've got to begin to speak Deuteronomy 28 and 13. And the Lord will make you the head and not the tail. You shall be above only and not beneath. If you heed the commandments of the Lord, Isaiah 43 and 1, it says, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. Isaiah 40, oh, I love my name. Isaiah 41 and 10, it says, fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. You got to begin to speak those affirmations over your life in the midst of the storm. And when you're around people, we all see the storm. I need you to be able to speak God in your storm. Sometimes you're the only God that people see. You're the only Christ that people will hear. So you can't speak the same thing everybody else is speaking. You got to speak God in the midst of your situation. I'm not saying I'm broke. I'm not saying I'm struggling. I might be a little bent, but I ain't broke. I'm not going to successful. I'm not going to say that I'm a failure. I'm not going to call my kids a failure. I'm not going to call them dummy. I'm not going to call them stupid. I'm not going to tell them they're not going to be nothing no more. You got to speak what God said, even in the middle of your storm. We let the storm make us get amnesia. What did God say? Look at your neighbor and say, what did God say? Tony, what did God say over there? What did God say? Elder Cooper, what did God say? What did God say? I believe God. I'm trying to tell somebody that I know it don't look good sometimes, but you need to be of good cheer. Point number 3, verse number 24 says, do not be afraid. Paul, you must be brought before Caesar, and indeed God has granted you all those things, all those who sail with you. Point number 3, last point. I need you to understand, even in the midst of your storm, God is still protecting you. God is still protecting you. God, I just need to remind somebody that God is still protecting you.